I've spent the past few weeks self-drafting this cable knit vest. It's been a time-intensive process, to say the least. So today I'm taking a break to sew some wide leg linen trousers for the summer. It will take me all day. My back will be sore from my terrible posture. I will be hand sewing 4 buttonholes because the machine that I inherited from my grandmother is nearly 75 years old. And while it still works perfectly, it does not have any functionality for buttonholes or zigzag stitches. I consider this a feature rather than a bug. It forces me to be a perfectionist with every sewing project. I don't have the option to just quickly zigzag over a raw seam to finish a project quickly. Everything needs to be perfectly finished with either a French seam or a flat-felled seam planned meticulously in advance. This is the same feature that I like so much about knitting. It's kind of impossible to rush a process when every stitch needs to be done by hand to pattern. Remember when I said this would take me all day? Try 2 days. So, why put in all this effort? Why do I make my own clothing in an era of fast fashion where I could have a vest and a pair of trousers delivered to my door by tomorrow? First, and maybe most importantly, I genuinely enjoy it. This is how I like spending my time and energy. I like being focused on the task at hand, off of my phone, balancing the creative and the technical parts of this craft. And in terms of the finished product, when getting ready for a stressful day, there's nothing that inspires more confidence than putting on one of my favorite handmade garments. Additionally, I am able to fully customize every aspect of these garments. I'm not restricted by the styles, sizes, colors, or fits offered in any given season in any given store. I remember as a teenager, if I needed a new cardigan, I would go to the mall and I would be limited to the handful of options that were available in the stores that catered to my demographic. If striped crew necks were in that year, I was getting a striped crew neck. Eventually, I turned primarily to thrifting for my wardrobe, but I was still limited to what was available in the stores, and I lamented as they became more and more full of barely worn fast fashion pieces. These days, having learned how to knit and sew, I can be as particular as I want, from choosing the materials to the patterns to modifying the fit for my body and preferences. Another benefit is mending and altering garments. Modern ready-to-wear garments are not constructed in a way that facilitates mending. With these trousers, I will be able to mend them because I am so intimately familiar with their construction process. And as for this vest, I can always unravel it and turn the wool into something else. Finally, I think we're all aware of the ethical and environmental issues concerning fast fashion, and at some point the question becomes, well, what, if anything, can we do about it? Could we use our hobbies to increase our self-sufficiency and decrease our reliance on consumption? The trousers are done. I'm really happy with them. So the impetus for making this video for me is that I realized that it's been think a little over a year since I last bought ready-to-wear clothing. To be clear, I was never like a fast fashion person, like ultra fast fashion. I wasn't like out here doing Shein hauls or anything. But it has been now over a year since I last did like a reasonably sized ready-to-wear order. And that's mostly been by accident. As I have been learning how to knit and sew, I've just been gravitating towards these handmade items a lot more. And I do want to emphasize something before we start talking about like my goals and plans. I am not suggesting that it is everybody's responsibility to like knit a dozen sweaters or get a sewing machine, learn how to sew. It's a very resource intensive process like we've seen here, and not everybody has those resources. I'm very fortunate that I do, and also that I have the desire to do this, that I genuinely enjoy spending my time this way. I'm at this point now where, having accidentally started to wear so many of my handmade items, I would really like to get more intentional about that and balance both the knitting and the sewing in a way that curates like a very intentional wardrobe in a defined style. So that's what I want to go over with you today, is what my process has been to this point and what I am going to look to do moving forward. So what exactly are my goals here? Goal number one is that if I am capable of making something, like if I currently have the resources and the skills to do it, I would like to do it rather than purchase something. This goal is inspired by a creator here on YouTube named Mariah, and I will link to her video below, but she did a fantastic job of outlining like all of the limitations in what she could make, what she can't make at the moment, what she wants to prioritize. And I was really inspired by that to kind of lay out the same thing in terms of capabilities and limitations. So what am I capable of making at this moment? I can't think of any limitations in terms of knitting for me at the moment. That's not to say that I'm the most experienced knitter in the world. I am not. I've been doing this obsessively for about a year and a half now. And I just kind of have this mentality where even if something is advanced, there's nothing I can't figure out with like a deep dive into YouTube. With sewing, we have already discussed the limitations of my machine, and I am happy for those limitations, to be honest. It really lets me focus in and sort of master the skills that I do currently have access to. But for now, my limitation is woven garments, so not sewing any knits, and relatively simple constructions. Then there are the more obvious limitations that I will absolutely still have to purchase. This would be things like active wear. I don't make my own jewelry. I'm not about to become a cobbler. Cobblers are people who make shoes, right? Well, the AI summary says yes, so maybe not. But yeah, this isn't a video about like quitting fast fashion altogether and never shopping again. It's more about taking the steps that I can at this point in my life. So goal number two is to curate garments that go together. I don't want to go like full-on capsule wardrobe in the like minimalist sense that you see on YouTube sometimes, where people have like 3 t-shirts and 2 pairs of trousers. Not all the way, but I do generally want to have that strategy where if I randomly grab 2 items from my wardrobe, there's like an 80% chance that they will go together. And I also do have the limitation of space. I also have sort of a personality where owning too many things does overwhelm me, and also owning things that I don't actually use tends to overwhelm me. So all of that in mind, I want to be really intentional about which garments I am bringing into my wardrobe and how they work with the others. Now, goal number 3, I want to challenge myself to learn new things, because when you hear goal number 2, capsule wardrobe, your immediate thought, especially when it comes to knitting, is like, okay, all stockinette everything. How boring is that going to be? So I want to be sure to balance that with somewhat complex makes and learning new things and continuing to push myself. Okay, and finally, goal number 4, make garments that suit my personal style and my lifestyle. Am I really going to reveal my Pinterest here? I guess so. Basically, my process with Pinterest since about 2023 is that on January 1st every year, I start a brand new Pinterest board. That way, when I go to save a pin, I've got a clean slate for the year, and it also gives me this historical reference point where I can go back to my 2024, 2023 boards and kind of compare to what I currently like. That means that I'm a lot more likely to spot trends. Like if I just started pinning something this year, I'm not gonna go spend all of my time and energy to get that thing or to make that thing. But if I've been saving leather jackets since 2023, that's a pretty good sign that that is something worth investing in for me. So my advice here is to not just open up Pinterest right now and like let the algorithm define your personal style over the course of one session. It really is more about finding these sources of inspiration over time. The other strategy that I have on Pinterest with those kind of annual boards is I've got a board that is for full outfits. So anytime I see an outfit on Pinterest that meets two criteria, first of all, would work well with my lifestyle, and second of all, I would wear every single item in that outfit head to toe. If it fits those two criteria, it goes onto my board called full outfits. And that just means that I've got a board where I didn't just save something just for the shoes. Or another example would be like, I might see a blazer that I absolutely love and would wear into the office, but I work from home. So for my lifestyle, it wouldn't really come in handy. So with all of those goals in mind, let's come up with an actual plan here. First, I've put together these pictures of all of the handmade items in my wardrobe that I reach for regularly. So this isn't everything I've ever made, but it is the ones that I reach for on a regular basis. I really like this, and I think it's important for this process because it gives me a good sense at a glance of what color palette I already have in my wardrobe, what types of garments, so like sweaters, vests, trousers, etc., I have more of and less of. It really, I think, is helpful to see all of that in one picture. Like, what am I reaching for, and what is there already enough of? What is there maybe not enough of? In my example, I'm seeing a very defined color palette, pretty light colors, greens, blues, neutrals. I'm seeing a lot of flowy bottoms and a lot of texture on the tops, but not a lot of sort of high contrast color work type things or a lot of really busy texture. So for my second step of this process, I've put together a little mood board from that full outfits Pinterest board that we talked about. And the reason I think this is such an important second step, with the first step, I can see what I wear in my wardrobe, and with the second step, I see what I wish I was wearing. And just looking at these two side by side, I should really easily, at a glance, be able to identify what's the difference, what is the missing link, and what are the gaps in my wardrobe. The very first thing that I notice looking at these two collections side by side is that the Pinterest one is a lot more like dark and moody. And you can see why my handmade items would not be that, because if you are going to knit a sweater, you're probably not going to do a black one. You might, but I have not in the past, especially as more of a beginner. I've gravitated to the more like beginner-friendly creams and such. So I do think it's noteworthy that in terms of style and mood, I tend to gravitate towards something a little darker than what I have in my wardrobe right now. The other thing I'm noticing here is a very kind of gender neutral kind of tomboy style, which again, knowing me, is not surprising. And there's like a general comfort level and coziness to that, but at the same time, everything is still quite polished and also has some really interesting silhouettes. So it's not just like everything's oversized and baggy. It's like it might be oversized, but it does still have an interesting shape and structure to it. Thinking of my own wardrobe, I would put my recently finished Zakuri cardigan into that category, where it's got a lot of positive ease, but it also has some really interesting design elements and shapes to it. Okay, so I do think my main takeaway here is that color palette. I'm absolutely not going to be like strict with myself about this color palette. It's not like I'm only ever going to make gray and navy things going forward. but I do want to prioritize getting a few of those items into my wardrobe. Looking at the side by side here, I can identify some gaps in my wardrobe that I am capable of filling. What I'm going to do is list those gaps, and then I'm going to offer some pattern suggestions. Just a note, I have not made all of these patterns, but I will put a little note on the screen for the ones that I have made so that you know that I can recommend them. So the first gap is an oversized button down. I think specifically like an off-white linen one possibly would be fantastic. A few patterns that are options for this would be the Jenna shirt by Closet Core Patterns. There's also the Cornell shirt by LB Textiles. And then there's also a newly released Slow shirt by So Liberated. I'm very interested in that one because there appears to be an option specifically to hand sew it or to hand sew parts of it. And as we discussed, I have to hand sew my buttonholes. So anytime there's something like that worked into a sewing pattern and it doesn't just assume that you have a serger and that you want to zigzag stitch everything, I get really excited about patterns like that. There are definitely quite a few barrel leg pants on here. And now I've been hesitant to just jump in and do barrel leg trousers because it has been a bit of a trend, but it's been a trend that's lasted a couple years now, and I do keep coming back to it. And especially looking at my mood boards, I can see how well it fits into this specific style. So I think I'm gonna go for it. And there's a ton of sewing patterns for barrel leg trousers because of the trend that's been around. A few that I have on my radar: Kite Pants by Matchy Matchy Sewing Club. The Parker Pants by BF Patterns is a newer release. There's the Arthur Pants by So Liberated. These ones look more dramatic, but then they also have options for the elastic waistband or for like a full fly and button situation. And then finally, I think that the one that I'm going to go for is the Potting Pants by Allotment Clothing. These ones look really nice. They don't have the best pattern pictures in the world on their page, but then if you go look at other people who have made them, everyone's look fantastic. This next one is one that became really obvious to me once I put that picture together of my wardrobe, because in my head I thought, I've made some long skirts, some midi skirts, some maxi skirts, surely I don't have to make any more. But looking at my wardrobe and then comparing it to my mood boards, I don't have any plain skirts, and I do think that that is a very clear gap that I am seeing, is that my skirts are all prints. I think the reason I haven't done that in the past is just that I don't think you ever wake up feeling particularly inspired to make like a beige rectangle skirt. A few patterns that I've had my eye on for this one: there's the Sandra skirt by Sid Graham. There's the Chloe Bias skirt by Soften Studio. This one I have made multiple times and it's fantastic. Then there's also the Plain Jane skirt by Neighborhood Patterns. And considering what I wanted to do was a plain skirt, I definitely have my eye on the Plain Jane one. Okay, this next one is a bit of a goal for the future, but you can see I've got a few like winter wear type items on my mood board with like nice long coats, black coats, and just like kind of these dark, moody winter outfits. I do have a nice long black winter coat. It's probably like 10 years old at this point and it is falling apart. And I have had it on my like to mend list for a couple of winters now. And to be honest, it might be getting past the point of mending. So this is a bit of a stretch goal. It's again, kind of like the oversized button down. I'm not going to get to it tomorrow. I feel like I have to improve my skills a bit first, but it would be really nice to make like a handmade wool coat. So the specific pattern that I have my eye on for this is the Darcy coat by the Modern Sewing Company. And yeah, I'm very excited about that. Okay, and now on to knitting. Now, the first one we've kind of already discussed. In the past, I have gravitated more towards light colors because that is easier to knit with, but then also more textured knits like this one I'm wearing today. So the gap that I'm seeing here is basics, anything stockinette, anything ribbed, and also dark colors. I think dark colors is really the more apparent one. And earlier in this video, you saw me working on this dark gray vest. It is heavily textured, but it is also a dark color. So that is the kind of thing that I am getting at here. Now, obviously you could apply any pattern, any knitting pattern to this category, but a few that I have in mind here. There's the Un sweater by November Knits. I've actually cast this on already, but I am doing it in a pop of color. So I think if I like the pattern, I could absolutely see myself doing it in the future as a neutral. There's also the All Season Vest by Noriko Ishikawa. I love this pattern. This was actually the first garment that I ever made. And there was actually a whole conversation in the comment section of my last video, people saying that they had already made the all-season vest and wanted to make a second one. I feel like that's just the best review you can give of a pattern, to want to do it multiple times. And I could absolutely see myself doing that as well. And then also by Noriko Ishikawa, there's the Zukuri cardigan. I mentioned that earlier as a great basic that also has structure to it. I just finished mine, but again, I did it in a pop of color, so I could absolutely see myself doing it in a neutral down the road. The next gap that I am seeing in this mood board is hats. Technically, I guess I can't really call this a gap. I do have hats, but in both knitting and sewing, hats are such a great way to use up scraps that I need to include it on this list, just as a reminder that you can never have too many hats. Have them in a few different colors. It is now the very end of April as I'm filming this, and even on the days that are like 10, 15 degrees Celsius, I am still wearing my like mohair toque. So they're just so versatile, not just for the dead of winter. Now, my go-to pattern is the Oslo hat by Petite Knit, but there are also just so many patterns on Ravelry for free hats. So really anything would work here. And by the way, the picture of this girl with her maroon toque and her dog has a matching sweater, how much does that need to be me and Maggie? One of the things I have on my Make 9 for the year is a like matching winter set. So again, in a nice yarn, I think this would be fantastic. A neutral color probably as well. Yeah, not a ton to say about this one, but a few patterns I have in mind. There's the Berlin scarf by Suzanne Muller. Now, I've actually cast this one on too, but again, in a pop of color. So I think it'll be fantastic, but some other patterns I have in mind are the Kilometer Scarf by Florence Miller. This one is a free pattern, very similar to the Berlin scarf, but without the I-cords at the end. And I believe that it just uses a kilometer of yarn, which is a great name. Curl Soho has the lovely ribbed scarf and a matching hat. Both free patterns, they look fantastic. And then final gap, it's only here once on my mood board, but it is all over my Pinterest, and it is also on my Make 9. The classic Aran cabled sweater. I have been overthinking this one for like a year now, and I haven't been able to pick a pattern yet, but I already have the yarn for it, and it would just be such a wardrobe staple for me. So there's a ton of patterns that would work for this one, but the two that I've written down here are the Serena sweater by Cookie the Knitter or the Moby sweater by Petite Knit. Okay, I think that is everything I have for you today. I'm not used to talking about sewing, so I hope I didn't embarrass myself too much. Let me know in the comments, for your personal style, what sewing or knitting patterns would you prioritize to put into a capsule wardrobe? Especially because I know everyone watching this channel has such different styles. I think it would be a fantastic resource.